Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Security Repo Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dwayne, here to talk to you about awesome security stuff and spread awareness. Uh, Please remember to like and subscribe, share this with your friends. It really does help us out as a channel and help us get that messaging out there. This week, we're very proud to be joined by Josh Kuntz. He serves as the Chief Information Security Officer for the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. That's a long title, where he is recognized as a leading expert in cybersecurity across the state. With nearly 3 decades of public service, including 6 years in the Marines and 24 years with various state agencies, he's cultivated a wealth of experience in physical and information security. And in last year, 2024, he was honored as the Austin ISA CISO of the Year. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. So let's just dive right in. I don't think we've had a CISO on the program before. I think you might be the first acting CISO. I think we've had people that have previously been CISOs. But let's just start there. How'd you get to become a CISO?
Well, I started out obviously in the Marine Corps. I had experience in physical security, and I was an electronics technician. So when I moved into state service, I worked in the Texas Law Enforcement Telecommunications Network, running their satellite system there. That that experience, I used both physical and information security tactics to secure that very important network. And basically, every law enforcement entity in the state relied on that. And I did finally get tired of 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday maintenance as an operations technician, and then moved into the security side at my first agency, which was the Texas Youth Commission, before they joined with the Texas Juvenile Probations Department to become the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. Built out their program and then moved on from there into other state agencies.
So I'm curious always what attracted you to the role? What made you think, hey, I want to be a CISO other than getting up at 5 a.m.?
So the whole concept of information security was relatively new with the state at the time that I moved over, and it was an opportunity to be a part of an emerging discipline within technology. And the again, being a Marine, the security aspect of or securing that data was an attractive thing for me, and I took to it well. And so it was an area that I became well versed in very quickly, and was able to bring other folks on and train other people in that area uh, with relative ease. And that became kind of my passion, was building programs and cultivating the next generation of security professionals.
Right on. And this isn't your first time at CISO here, and it wasn't just that jump from that first job to this job. You've had a number of CISO roles over the years, correct?
Absolutely. So I was the first CISO for the Texas Youth Commission, then the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, then the first CISO for the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles, which I kind of helped shepherd that agency through its split with TxDOT, when they were kind of separating out the customer service facing ends of the business versus the roads and bridges building ends of the business. Um, so DMV is where all the funds come in through fees and taxes, and then that goes into building roads and bridges. So that was an interesting aspect. We acted very much like a startup. It was a very agile organization. It's relatively rare for a new state agency to be formed. Usually, they're trying to consolidate state agencies and reduce the size of government, not increase it. And so that was an interesting time. And then from there, I went on to be the CISO for the Texas Workforce Commission, and then finally at the TDLR.
You have been a public servant your entire career, and I appreciate and thank you for that, for being out there on the front lines trying to keep Texas and really all of us citizens safe. But I can only imagine this brought a pretty unique set of challenges. This isn't, you're not a startup. You are a government listed organization, and I would just love to hear some stories and what are those challenges?
So with any good government organization, there's bureaucracy, and so part of that is around purchasing and adoption of technology. And so government is slower to adopt the cutting edge technologies, and the cutting edge, even quite frankly, the cutting edge methodologies of security and IT in general. And so that's been a challenge as I go through. The You mentioned being a hiring manager most of my career. Uh, that has always been a challenge in the state. I mean, we just don't pay as much as the private sector. And so that's always been one of those areas where we have to offer those other intangible benefits like flexibility in work schedule, good benefits, a pension, that kind of thing. So that's always been one of the areas that I've really tried to be creative in my hiring, not just try to focus on the traditional paths to cybersecurity, like oh, I was a network specialist or a server admin or a desktop support specialist, and try to find those other folks that might have associated experience or even desire and train them up and get them into those positions at an early age or early part in their career.
And I think that part of the challenge is just across the board. The one thing we have learned on this program is that there's really not a traditional background for cybersecurity. Like there are some that are more common than others, but I wouldn't say there's a normal path. And like being accommodating for anybody that wants to do the job, that can do the job, that we can train up to do the job, I think is the best path there. And I'd be curious though, is there more from like one type of background or more one traditional path for working for the state security?
So I think the most common, the two most common paths that I've seen that transition over into security were the network specialists, because they're generally running firewalls and routers, and so they have the concept of how do you set up an ACL, how do you restrict access, how do you do segmentation, which are all security concepts. And then also the other path that I always see was your server admins, because they're have the concept of hardening a server, right? Making it, taking away any of the default processes or protocols that aren't needed, making sure that you don't have your default passwords on there. They want to, generally they're approaching it from a focus on control versus a focus on security, but those two focuses overlap, and so those mindsets uh, went well into training, transitioning those folks into cybersecurity specialists.
One of the things that when we first talked, we met back at that speaker VIP dinner at Intellicon. I asked you not to map it out for us all together. We're not asking to expose any secrets over there, but what does the threat landscape look like at a government agency? Like for a private company, we got our customer data, we got our PII, we got credit card information, we got all that we're worried about, and I can only imagine you have that plus other concerns. Like what are the main worries you have as a CISO at a state agency?
Well, it really depends on the state agency. So many of the state agencies I've worked at, starting with my first one, we have law enforcement data, highly regulated data. Officer safety is on the line. I've worked at organizations like when I was at the Youth Commission. Now, not only are we talking about criminal history data, we're talking about youth criminal history data. So now it's even more protected. Um, and then you go further out into things like when I was at the DMV, we were the system of record for ownership of most people's second largest asset, their vehicle. If it doesn't matter what you say, if my system says that I own the Ferrari that is in your driveway, I own the Ferrari that's in your driveway. So that made it attractive for malicious actors to try to get in and change the data. Um, at my last organization, at the Workforce Commission, we were both the unemployment insurance provider, so we paid out the benefits and collected the taxes from the employers, but we were also doing subsidized childcare. So there's billions of dollars going out. Well, that's a lot of opportunity for fraud. It's a lot of opportunity for people to try to get in and get the money. And during COVID, we saw unprecedented amounts of fraud attempts by malicious actors because of so much additional funding that was part of that. I'm fortunate at my, I don't want to say we don't have any threat landscape, but my threat landscape is much less at the current agency I'm at. We do occupational licensing and some consumer safety regulation. We have 38 different programs that we license and regulate, anywhere from HVAC, podiatrists, midwives, uh, electricians, uh, nail techs, barbers and cosmetologists, to things like elevators and fuel pumps and boilers, for safety and health stuff. But we collect a fee, and you either send me a check, walk in person with cash, or you go through the state's online credit card system. So I don't have any of that. I don't pay out any money, and there's not an asset. So, I mean, if you're going to operate without a license, you're just going to operate without a license. You're not going to go through the trouble hacking into our system to try to insert a license record into our. It's just not worth it. So, our threat landscape is mostly about containment. It's about not allowing data leakage, not allowing data out that shouldn't be out or unprotected. And that's difficult because we have a lot of interaction with the licensing community. So we have to have this confidential information moving back and forth in electronic format over many interactions, and we need to make sure that every one of those interactions is safe.
I mean, thank you for again for securing that for us. Now, I wanted to step back, take a bigger picture look at your career and what's changed over that time. I can't imagine the same threats you were facing 10 years ago are the same exact ones you're facing now, though I imagine we didn't fix all the issues along the way. But yeah, how have you seen the role of a CISO change over your career?
So, in a number of ways, organizationally, the role of CISO has really become an oversight and governance role. Most time people think, oh, security, oh, those are tech guys. Well, yes, we have to have technical acumen, and I do have threat hunters. And I've been in organizations where not only did I have threat hunters, but I also had security operations staff that actually ran the appliances, the networks, that sort of thing. Um, and so over the years, this went from being a uh, subset of IT to being its own discipline. Um, and this, I've seen this transition over the year of the, you know 20 years I've been doing this with the state, in that it became more and more the watchdog on IT than a part of IT. In fact, that's what my talk at Intellicon was about, was the fact that there's a point at which your organization has gotten to that specialization phase where it doesn't make sense that the security apparatus is within the IT apparatus. I mean, early on, everybody's doing every job, so you can't separate them. And it's the jack of all trades group. But as you become more mature and those things become more well defined, that's when you start to go, okay, this goes from just doing the blocking and tackling to now doing the oversight and assurance and compliance. And that's when that role really needs to roll out from IT and be its own entity, as a peer to IT or in a whole nother organizational portion of the agency, to ensure that you have that separation, you don't run into these conflicts of interest. Um, and that's been the biggest organizational change. Uh, on the technical side, unfortunately, the worst thing hasn't changed. I'm fairly certain that the last 25 years of the Verizon breach report has had the number one vector for breach as patching. That hasn't changed in 2 decades, more than 2 decades. Now, how those things are exploited has changed. AI has made this a much faster and more sophisticated avenue. I think the reliance on or the shift away from the old school, the hacker sitting in a dark room in a hoodie with the glow of the screen, clicking away at the keyboard, breaking into the system, has been replaced with the heavy influence of social engineering and basically understanding that the people are the way you get in. The systems are becoming so much more sophisticated that it's more and more difficult to break in versus get somebody to let you in.
Yeah. I mean, the humans will always be the weakest link, and so you can get somebody to let you in, then you don't got a lot of work to do. You can just walk on in. Um, now, as we're wrapping up here, I did want to ask for folks out there listening that think, I would love to go down the path of being a CISO in my career. What's the best advice you could give them?
Don't get too locked in one specialty. I give this advice to all the folks that are in like a security management role that are trying to get into the CISOs. If you've only been a threat hunter, take a job as a GRC uh, supervisor. Make sure you understand that side of the business, because while the threat hunting is very important, that's the tactical piece of keeping the bad guys out. If you don't have the strategic side of the house of how do I bring my business into this conversation, and I think that's really the downfall that I see most CISOs get so stuck on the black and white of either you care about security or you don't. Well, no, security is a thousand shades of gray. It's all what amount of risk are you willing to take? And so that's the part that, and I tell people all the time. They ask, "How do you sleep at night?" I said, "Well, I give good advice because my job is really the advisor. I'm supposed to be your trusted advisor. For 90% of the things, I'm not the decision maker. There's 5% at the bottom that's the low hanging fruit stuff like, can we go to this website? The filter's catching it and it's something we're doing business with. Yeah, sure, no problem. And on the upper end, hey, can we do this thing? No, there's a law that says you can't. So no, we're not going to do that. So if it's not illegal or really simple, in the middle, I make a a risk assessment to my executive team, and then they decide, is this a risk I'm willing to take based on the business need? And I'm also very upfront with it. You don't have to take my advice. You do have to live with the consequences of your decision. So if I give you advice and you decide, no, I want to roll the dice, I need this business thing, and it goes pear shaped, I'm not the one that made the decision. I'm the one that told you it could go pear shaped. So I tell people, I said, you pay me to be pessimistic. I'm going to tell you the worst possible scenario and the likelihood of it happening, and then you get to decide whether or not that's a risk you want to incur. So that's kind of how I've gone through my career, and that's what I encourage people to don't get wrapped up in they care about security, they don't care about security. It's not about them caring about security. It's about the level of risk they're willing to take based on their circumstances. And you can't always know all those things. I try to keep myself fairly well plugged into what is the business concerned about? What is the legislature concerned about? How does that affect my agency? How does that affect my agency leadership? Where are the pressures that they're feeling? But I don't know all the variables. And so I just make sure they have good information to make informed decisions on.
That's awesome, man. I think a lot of people do get hung up on like how do I make them care about security rather than how do we balance the risks that realistically we're going to have to balance. We can't get this is the tiny Jonka law. You can't you'll never have enough resources, time, or people to do all the security stuff you need to do.
Mhm.
Live with those risks. Well, thank you for all your wisdom shared with us so far. We're getting to that last rapid fire round of the episode where we're going to ask you four questions we ask everybody, and then we'll let you wrap it up after that. But what is your all time favorite security command line tool?
So I'm going to have to admit to you, I am not a hands on keyboard guy. So I came into, now I did back in my days of operating the satellite system, I ran command line SQL on a deck system. So yes, I am old. Uh,
Well, do you have a general security tool that you have a go to that you
that
can't imagine living without?
back in those days when I was hands on, Wireshark was my best friend. So
All right, on. We hear that one quite a bit on the show. And you obviously have been a hiring manager with the C in your title. You're going to have been. Do you have a go-to, like, favorite question you ask every candidate?
every candidate, no matter what the job, I ask, what is the role of security in an organization? And there's three answers people give. One is protect. We need to keep the bad guys out and protect the data. The next best answer is the CIA triad. We're doing the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The best answer is to enable the business to operate securely. Because unless you're a cybersecurity firm, your business is not cybersecurity. Your business is whatever that deal is. So you have to enable the mission and keep them inside. I tell people, I'm here to keep you out of the ditches. That's it.
I love that, man. Thank you for providing the preferred answers there as well. Sometimes we just get the question part, leave us guessing. All right. I think everybody's favorite quick fire part of the show, what's the best security advice you can give us? Just general good security advice.
Convince IT to do the maintenance. You got to patch the systems. The focus of IT is so often on the innovation, the newest and shiny thing, the thing that's going to bring the better, faster, cheaper. But if you don't do the maintenance, that's going to be what bites you.
And what is the worst security advice you've ever heard out there in the world?
Uh, if they won't do the security, if they won't do the thing you want, you have to do it for them. You can't. You're again. I go back to I'm not the decision maker. If they don't want to do it, I can't. I can't make them understand it. So I just have to provide them good advice and hope that they make a good decision. I'll give them as much information as possible so they can make a good decision. But like I said, in the end, I'm not the decision maker. I'm the one that's providing you with the information to make a decision.
Yeah, working around them is never going to work out well, I don't think. Well, thank you very much for being here. We always let all our guests have the last word. So if there's anything you want us to know about the world of security, about being a CISO, anything else at all, where to follow your adventures out there, any books or blogs coming out, let us know.
So no books or blog. Well, I say that no books right now. I've I've got two different outlines started. When I have some time, I might get to that. Uh, but the thing I want to encourage everybody is that if you're in a leadership position, reach down. Reach down and help somebody else get to where you are. Don't covet that position like it's like you're the dragon sitting on the horde. It's that doesn't help the space. It doesn't help the profession. Share your knowledge. I started a CISO mentorship program last year. We had 9 mentees and 3 mentors, myself and 2 other CISOs. That was a rough start. That was a lot of effort, but it paid dividends. 4 of the 9 people mentees went on to get either ISO roles or higher level analyst roles. This year we have 13 mentees and 10 mentors. So while the number of mentees that are in the program went up, the number of people who wanted to participate to help those people also went up, and that I was very much encouraged by that.
That's really awesome, man. Thank you so much for being here and being part of the show, for sharing your knowledge with us and out there. And for those of you at home, please do like, subscribe. It does help us out. And send this to all your friends, especially the ones that want to be CISOs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.